Perfect. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Allcore Devs 240. Today we have the primary topics of Glamsterdam DevNet 7 specs and then some more Higota scoping. So let's dive right in. First up, it will be the topic of Glamsterdam DevNet 7 kind of spec finalization. I saw that Stefan, you had a comment with several open decisions that needed attention. Are you on the call? Can you talk about those?
Sure. So this is mainly a follow-up and a summary of what we were talking about in ACDT. And there are some issues or discussions that are still open, and we need to kind of decide if any of these are going to make it into DevNet 7. So the first one would be, I think, AD38. There was some discussion. I think this was from the guest side that started this discussion. Maybe we can get some...
So the idea is,
Yeah.
the idea is we need an additional check before we accessing the slot from the database. And last time in the last ACDT, and I think Tony and Maria and myself agree with this change, and I guess Dragon is also supportive. So we just need a few more opinion from other clients.
Okay, could we get opinion maybe of Besu as well?
I think it looks good to me. I had a look. It makes sense to charge before.
And Aragon?
Sorry, I didn't have a chance to look into it, so no opinion.
Okay, but it generally sounds like that we can move forward with this one. The next one, I think, then, unless anyone else has any opinion. Yeah, and can we get the pull request as well? I didn't find it for this 8030. Thanks. Sounds good. Etherx also fine.
Just a quick question on that though. My understanding is like it requires a spec change, but it doesn't require an EIP change, right? So it's mostly we need to have a spec change there. Is this correct, Gary?
Yeah, I think so, but I'm not sure like where we should put this change in, like in the A038 or like the 7928. So we just need to find a good place to put this change.
But just to clarify, are
Gary?
we talking about the behavioral change, or are we just talking about a documentation change?
It's a behavioral change.
Gary, didn't I put something into 7928? I vaguely remember that I had a PR for that ready. Did I dream this?
Let me quickly check. No, in the current 7928, it doesn't say that we need this additional check. It only mentioned we need to check the stipend first and then to calculate the gas cost.
Okay, then can we get a PR for this? So then I can add it to the definite 7 specs. That would be great.
Yeah, I think there should be a PR somewhere. I remember I created one. Let me check. Maybe I just pushed and didn't create a PR. I will double check that.
Okay, then moving on. The next one was already shared by Marius. I can share it again. And it's a change in 8037. And it's not clear necessarily if this is going to make it in or not. Has there been any further discussion?
Maybe
yeah.
I can add some context here. So at the moment we are discussing a different change to 2780 that will essentially mean that this PR is no longer needed because it solves the issue that this PR was aiming to do. So we discussed this on the last ACDT EL breakout. And essentially the idea is to change how we charge intrinsic costs to only consider charges that don't depend on state, and then all charges that depend on state for ETH transfers, and this includes authorizations as well, they are processed during runtime. And if there's not enough gas for them, the transaction is still valid, but goes out of gas. So it's a slight change in how we define transaction validity and intrinsic gas costs. But I think it's a good one. So at the moment, Dragan opened a PR to the EIP with a proposal, and we are essentially discussing there some details, but we would expect, so what we ask clients is to look into these, see if they can find any issues, and ideally this would go in Amsterdam DevNet 7.
Sounds great. Thanks for the update. And then for the next one, it would be also a draft PR for intrinsic cache, a question that came up. I will share. Yeah, it's already exactly shared. Is this still relevant as well?
I would say that it's covered in my PR. Now this is like topic that we need to discuss. Do we want to handle warming and warm and cold gas inside both the authorization list and for the target transaction target or transaction 2? But yeah, I think it's both of those questions are covered in my PR. basically it's new mechanism that we are going to introduce to basically allow halting on the pre-execution part of the code.
Sounds great. So we can close both of the other PRs in favor of your PR, Dragan. All right, then there's one more kind of housekeeping. Tony, you already merged it since sounds great. Okay. I think that's pretty much done then from my
Yeah,
side.
this was just finishing this discussion about the different options where to track something, and now we, as we said, we went for option 1, which is keeping everything as is, and since the EAP was already at option 2, we reverted that back. So this PR is essentially just reverting back everything the clients didn't implement yet.
Sounds good. Then maybe before we go to the next item, just also for context, I think the idea was that we are really trying to get to a final DevNet 7 spec as soon as possible. Try to make decisions as much as possible today, and then ideally have any last pending items resolved on ACDT on Monday. I think at least that was my understanding. Yeah, so with that in mind, just quick check, Stefan, from all the topics we just discussed, are they all basically in a good place? It sounded like it. Anything we should just make sure has a decision on the call here?
From the EL side, I think that is pretty much everything we talked about in ACDE. I think it was that there are not going to be any more EL EIPs. So this is pretty much the summary as far as I'm aware of. And Barnabas also said that we might even be faster with Timestamp DevNet 7 than ACDT if we can get clients to create Amsterdam DevNet 7 branches. I will update the spec after the call.
Sounds good. Yeah, then okay, sounds good. Then the next topic there regarding the DevNet 7 was, I think, about the deposit contract. Barnabas, you had a comment?
Yeah, Nico from Northstar made a PR for the system contract to basically change the target and the max deposits per block, and this is basically reducing the target from 32 to 8 and the max from 256 to 64. I'm just curious if we should be able to merge this in, or if anyone has any objections for this.
I'm okay with merging it
in. So I optimistically already included this change in the Ethereum Genesis generator. So now if you're using Ethereum Genesis generator Glamsterdam.net 7 image, then you will need to start using the new address that I have mined for the DevNet, and that is posted here in the chat, and it's also in the issue, and I also posted in the Steel chat.
Felix?
Yeah, I just quickly wanted to raise. So I created another PR for the contract. This is following a discussion that happened on Monday in ACDT. So I created a PR that changes the contract so it allows the system to disable deposits to the builder queue. And I think this might become necessary if we ever want to upgrade the contract or for another reason. And it can also be reversed. So it is possible to undisable the contract also via system call. And I would just appreciate if we could somehow figure out like if we should move forward with this. And in general, I want to say that for 8282, it entered the process quite late. And so I would prefer to just finalize the contracts now and then figure out some external auditing for it as well. so that we can wrap it up.
Sounds good. So is there any open decisions then on this?
Well, the decision is if we want to do this. It's a bit. I should have put this on the agenda. I'm sorry. I just realized it. I just saw that we were going to discuss the 8282, so I thought I would just bring it up quickly. We can try to resolve it async. I just kind of wanted to have it so that by next week, maybe we are kind of feel comfortable about the contracts, and then we can just hand it off to some people to really audit it one more time.
Right. And then the question is just, would it be important to basically make this have this make the cut already for DevNet 7, or not? And if so, basically, could we get that decided on like a faster timescale?
I would prefer to have it in or not have it at all. So if we decide to do it, then we should do it for DevNet 7. And if we decide not to do it, then we should just close that PR.
Yeah, I don't know. I can merge it into the repo and you guys can just take it from there if you want. It was just much more the question of like, who is going to be in charge of this decision anyways? I mean, I just made the update because I felt like this is something we could do, but I don't actually know who I should ask. If I feel like we all just kind of have to agree on the scope of the contract. We can do that in Discord, I guess. But so if you want to put it in, it's not going to make the contract break. Like the DevNet is going to work no matter what. It's just a question of like, yeah, do we want this feature or not?
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice, of course, to decide now. I'm not sure given that it wasn't on the agenda, maybe we don't have enough people with context, but I think, yeah, it sounds like it would be really desirable if we at least have this locked in by the end of the week. I don't know, do we feel comfortable making a decision on this now, or should we like otherwise at least try to aim for like a decision by tomorrow async? Or... Does anyone have a strong opinion in either direction, Mario?
I don't have an opinion on it, but I would like more context on why we want to do this, not the technical details of how it is implemented, rather why. And that I think we can make a decision.
I can give a very quick overview of this. So on Monday we discussed the possible options for changing the parameters of the contract in the future. And one of them would be to make it parameterized in a way where the system will always supply the current target and max values to the contract in the system call. If we do this, we can schedule a future hard fork where we update the parameters which are passed to the contract. The other option would be to just deploy a new contract with different parameters or even different logic. But then if we do this, we're going to have a situation where there's two contracts live at the same time and people can technically deposit into both. So in that case, if we ever want to do an upgrade on a contract like that, we have to be able to turn off the old one in the sense that the system can still read the remaining requests from the contract, but users would no longer be able to deposit into it. And I feel like for the builder deposits, this is especially important since this contract will accrue quite a bit of balance. So it's like if you put your deposit, but the system will never read from it, your entire deposit will be lost and there's no way to ever recover it again. So I feel like there should just be this option to disable it. And then finally, there is this case where like EPBS somehow turns out completely broken and we have to just stop deposits. And so this could also be done then by scheduling a hard fork that will essentially set the system call input to a value that disables deposits. It's not like this feature is only triggerable if the system decides to trigger it. So we would have to make changes to the system to actually make it trigger. But it's like once the contract is deployed, I don't think we want to go to a situation where we then retroactively have to modify it via irregular state transition and so on. And that's why I'm putting this feature in, just so that it's clear from the start that like it is possible for the system to turn off deposits. And I just want to know, do we want this or not? I don't want to go into too much detail there. I just thought this is a nice option to have. Maybe something we should have also added in the earlier contracts, but we didn't.
Barnabas?
How would you handle this? Like, let's assume we require a new deposit contract for a different builder type. How would you handle the fork transition then? Would you expect people to deposit again to the validator contract, and then in the fork transition, we would process them into the new contract?
I'm not really sure what the question is about, but I think it's like if we would do this upgrade scenario, then basically the system would still read from the previous contract for one more fork, and then it would just stop reading from it eventually. But we would also start reading from like any new contract. Like that's how we would do the transition.
Okay.
It's not the most important thing. I agree. I also see it in the comments. Poto saying like this is super unimportant. I also think it's unimportant, but I feel like this is our chance now to just like lock in the contract. We can ship the completely immutable one. It's also fine for me. I just wanted to propose it as an option so we know this is possible and it's actually kind of easy to implement. Anyway, let's just be done with this now. Let's just like discuss it on Discord or whatever.
Okay, so then the default would be to not accept this change, but if there's enough of a coalition to make to be in favor of it, we could still decide by tomorrow to accept it, I think. Does it sound reasonable? Also, yeah. Okay, sounds good. Then I think we can move on for now. Next one is wait, double check, Barnabas. Otherwise, we had everything decided right for the deposit contract.
Right. So like if PR50 is merged in, then the deposit address and the bytecode is correct. And if you also merge in 49, then I will have to basically regenerate the bytecode. But yeah, it's based on the decision. I think we shouldn't call it in this call. Like I think we should make a decision here and not wait for another discussion somewhere else. I think this is as good as it's gonna get. We have 78 people here, so I think we should be able
Okay.
to make the decision here.
Okay. Well,
So
then
we can move
let's.
on.
I mean, obviously, people haven't really had time to look into the like. I mean, we've heard Felix's description now. I mean, from my side, I can say the description seemed like a nice to have. Like, if there's no specific consideration not to do it, it seems like we should just do it. Seems good, but obviously there might be some nuanced implication around extra complexities that are not so obvious. Yeah, I don't know. I'm happy to just make a decision now. If people are strongly opinionated in either direction. Do we have any client devs that after hearing Felix's description would lean either into including or excluding that change?
Maybe we can do what Matt suggested, that the default is we ship it, and if anyone is opposed to it, then they should speak up.
Sure. Anyone would prefer to just keep it out? To basically, anyone is worried that this might include some extra complexities, something we might have overlooked here. Anyone would prefer to just stick with the old version?
I just want to say, I think that this is kind of a no-op in general. Like, it gives us this ability in the future to maybe turn it off, but it costs nothing for us to really add as a feature to this contract, or like it doesn't cost extra gas for users. So I think we should just put it down. We probably should have done this for the other ones too.
Yeah, it does seem reasonable to me. It's like it's really more about like extra auditing surface, maybe like just having the parameters passed in the system call. Maybe that's something that it's just a little bit extra testing surface or something. I don't know, but it does seem otherwise like a no-brainer to just go ahead with it. So yeah, seems like no one is speaking up with strong concerns. Then I would just say decision is that we go ahead and accept Felix's changes. Okay. Then yeah. Then like let's do that. That's so we will make this one more change to the deposit contract. Okay, great. That was then everything on the deposit contract. Then other open questions for DevNet 7 that we should address today. My understanding was, for example, that there maybe was still some repricing related topics in general, or something at least where we should double check shared understanding about how final the numbers are regarding repricing. I don't know, Maria, could you maybe give a quick update on this?
Sure, happy to. So I think these relates mostly to EIP, so 8038, which changes the cost of state access operations, and 2780 that changes e-transfers. So for these two EIPs, we have at the moment the numbers that are in Amsterdam DevNet 6. They are based on our best estimate of right now how we expect client performance to look like in order to so those are what the prices should be for all clients to have 100 million gas per second performance. But at this moment, we still have a couple of clients not hitting that target. So they are still working on optimizations, essentially. We are we have high confidence that the clients will be able to hit those targets, and those should be the final numbers. But the reason why they are not yet is because we are still working on optimization. So there's two things we need to clear in order to say that these numbers are final. First, all clients need to meet these targets, so we have to finish up the optimizations. And second, we are now starting to run a wider benchmark. So at this point, we were only using a subset of our benchmarks for running things faster. And now we are starting to run a larger subset of benchmarks that will consider not only the tests we are using for the repricings, but a wider range of worst cases. And this is the same test suite we were using for the tests we were doing when we were trying to raise the gas limit last year. And so the goal now is to use Amsterdam DevNet 6 spec to run this wider benchmark and confirm that all clients are performing at the needed million gas per second target so that we can have so we can increase the gas limit. So we need to clear these two things. And we expect to have more updates on this by the next ACDE.
And so you're saying by the next ACDE, but so that would mean that for now we would operate under the assumption that the numbers as we have them are basically meant to at least be final. But of course, need one more round of confirmation, but we can for now operate under the assumption that they will not change. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. So they will change if we find some issues during the full benchmarks. But yeah, at this point, I think we can call it maybe stable numbers, if not final.
Okay, good. So they're stable numbers. We can use them for DevNet 7, and hopefully no changes necessary for the full rollout. Okay, that sounds good. Then I think that those were all the items that I at least was aware of in terms of DevNet 7 readiness. Is there anything else, any other topics, open threads, anything that would block a DevNet 7 rollout? Barnabas, for example, you said the ideal target would already be by the end of this week. My understanding was there was maybe one open decision around the specific PTC deadline or something, that maybe that's obviously not an ACDE side decision, but is that also on track to being resolved, or does this need attention from anyone here from the EL side?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if this is a discussion we should start bringing up now, but the general question is whether we should be changing the PTC and possibly the attestation deadlines as well in this fork, or should we only touch it in the coming up forks?
Sounds good. And yeah, I'm not sure if we want to open this now necessarily because yeah, immediately now Tony Photos, I see the hands up. The question is more, do we need to discuss this now? Or if so, where is this decision to be made of like, do we do something there DevNet 7 or not? Is the decision basically already that we're not going to make any changes in DevNet 7? Or is this still an open question, Barnabas?
I would prefer to have a final spec on DevNet 7. So if we expect to want to make a change for mainnet in the PTC deadline, then I think we should actually discuss it now.
Okay. Yeah, that's why I wanted to at least check. Like then let's briefly see the Tony and Photos hands up. Tony first.
Yeah, I think I always took it for granted that we would change those deadlines. And I think clients are also ready to do that very flexibly because they are just putting those deadlines to a certain percentage in the slot. So for DevNets, it doesn't actually matter where we put those deadlines. But in the final fork, we should definitely make sure to have that attestation deadline at second 2, at second 3. And if we want to be very aggressive at second 2, but probably starting at second 3. And then the payload deadline at second 6 or 7, probably better to go with 6. And this was discussed in the EPBS Discord channel. Not sure we had broad agreement there, but it felt like rough consensus.
And Photos?
Yeah, I agree with Tony that we should be targeting not more than 6 seconds, and I would even go lower. But anyways, not more than 6 seconds for the payload deadline. And regardless if we don't want to change the PTC deadline, which is currently at 9 seconds, we need and we should be putting a different deadline for the payload and the blobs and the PTC attestation because that's not being tested now. As long as these two numbers are different, it doesn't matter what's the difference, but we really want to be testing this. So this is something that the dual deadline should be tested. It's not clear to me that clients are actually able to handle this. I've tested on Kurtos's only Tech1 and Lodestar, and it seems to be fine. I'm not sure if every client already handles this configurable by 2 different deadlines.
And Photos, just to clarify, would this need for 2 different deadlines exist even if we were to just decide to move both deadlines forward by the same amount, or is it maybe just not enough?
This is already merged. This is already in the spec, and clients should already be able to handle it. It's just that we're not testing it, and it's not really clear that clients do handle it.
I see. And so then, oh yeah, Barnabas, you're unmuting.
Yeah, so the main reason we're not testing it is because there's no PR to adjust these values in the consensus spec repo. So like, I think if we have a good idea of what values we want to be using, then we should just go for it, I think, in DevNet 7 and try to evaluate there. I know that it's not going to give us a very good representation because it's not going to be a 1,000 node network. But we can do a larger DevNet later on, for sure.
The reason we're not testing this now is that we've never had a DevNet that was stable enough so that we move into testing for choice. We don't really have the basic implementation stable yet. We're having problems with peering, we're having problems with syncing, we're having problems like isolated clients. So it seems to me that like on top of that, adding the stress of testing something new, it was too much. That's why we never tested this. But I think every one of us were assuming that these deadlines would be different than what they currently are.
That makes sense. Then the question is DevNet 7 then the right moment to now start testing this, to start having 2 separate deadlines? It seems like the tendency would be to say yes. But then timing-wise, we would probably ideally want to make the decision, I mean, again, by the end of this week. Ideally, of course, today, the thing is, of course, this is a question not just for the EL devs that directly, like it's more a CL side question. It does affect the EL, but more CL side question. So the question is whether we could have some candidate numbers and then confirm async with the on the CL side that works for everyone. Do we have good candidate numbers? Like, could we now basically pick some sort of candidate
3,
deadlines
6,
that we
and
want to
9
go
are
with?
very good.
3, 6, and 9?
Yeah.
Is
So
this broad
that's
consensus?
what is very safe for the target gas limit that we were thinking.
But the attestation deadline really doesn't need 3 seconds, does it?
Well, read Carlos's report.
Have you got the link for
Yeah, I
it?
think the safest will be to start with 3, and then after we ship the PBS in Amsterdam, we can start doing analysis on mainnet and see, for example, if we still observe like a second of timing games, then we can likely go to 2 seconds. Like I would say we just observe how the network is doing and then push for 2 seconds in Hagota.
I also think that we have the slack, and the problem of shipping 3 is that this slack will be taken over by builders. So it would be good to try to target less than 3 seconds, but at any rate, this is not really a hard fork, and we can actually coordinate this, so it's not really a problem.
Okay, so then can we basically say from our side we would like to go 3, 6, and 9, and we just confirm with the Barnabas, would you be able to confirm with the CL clients that they are all okay with 3, 6, 9? So we could finalize this by the end of the week and have it in DevNet 7?
So I think what would be a bit more reasonable is if someone made a PR for the consensus pack with the adjusted parameters, and then we could finalize it on ACDT. And then ideally we could have a new Alpha 12 release out with 7688 and this change. And then we could target a launch around next week, Wednesday.
That sounds good to me. Does that work for everyone?
Justin, could you please open a PR for 369?
Yeah, I will. Or I guess I'll let POTUS do it since he's already working on it.
Sounds good. But then this might have been the last item for DevNet 7. Is there anything else DevNet 7 related? Any other remaining open question? Anything we should bring up now?
Yeah, maybe just that there's the discussion happening for 8037 in the 2780-intrinsic-tx-gas channel on our ETH R&D, and it would be nice for all clients to chime in there.
Sounds good. And I think Dragan had a comment in chat earlier saying that Guru gave a good summary of the alternative. I'll paste the link in high level as well. I hope this is the right link. Should be. Okay, and there as well, idea would be to basically for this decision to be fully made by tomorrow. Is that right? Or by I guess by Monday's ACDT?
Monday
I
seems
mean,
more
we
probable.
have a PR already where we are discussing. I would say ACDT would be a good goal to reach. So let's have the discussion today and tomorrow and try to close the PR by Monday.
Okay. Yep, that seems like a good target. Okay, then now I think this might have been all the DevNet 7 related topics. Anything else? Okay, then that's great. Then we can move on. One more quick Glamsterdam item just to shout out. There is the question of choice of mascot for the Glamsterdam hard fork. Do have a look at the comment by Andrew on the agenda item. Okay, then next up we have Higota planning. In particular, from the ACDE coordinator side, we got together and we think that it would be reasonable now to set a deadline for the proposals. So we can then go over to start scoping. We gave guidance in advance that we would basically give a 4-week heads up to be a bit more kind of permissive here, given the ACDE ACDC split. We would do 5 weeks, so that it's 4 weeks from first mention on the ACDC side as well. That would put us to August 6. So unless there is any particular protest here, I think we would just go ahead and say that August 6 is the deadline for Hegota EIP proposals. Okay. No immediate protests, so then we go ahead with that. And then we have a few more EIPs proposed for Hegota to go through today. The first two were by Thomas, 8250 and 8272. Thomas, are you on the call?
Yes, I'm here.
Then go ahead.
Can people see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so hi everyone. Yeah, I'm very excited to propose the 2 EIPs for Hegota today. So the first one is EIP 8250, and it's called Kid Nonces, and the second one is 8272, and it's recent roots. And so before I get into what the specific EIPs do, I want to just like clearly state sort of like the goal. And what these basically 2 EIPs will enable, which is like native, trustless, censorship resistance, private protocol transactions on Ethereum L1. I think it's like very exciting. One thing that I also want to say is like these EIPs are not about enshrining like a full sort of like privacy pool in protocol. Instead, the goal is really to let privacy applications and protocols develop their own designs, compete, innovate. And the key thing that Kid Nonces and recent roots enable is basically I see them as like the minimal upgrades we can do so that private transactions benefit from the core properties that are given by the protocol, and those core properties will be trustlessness and censorship resistance. I also want to say that Kid Nonces and recent roots are not the only EIPs that are needed to get there. They really do sit on top of frame transactions, and they very heavily benefit from Fossil. Of course, the nice thing is that Fossil is already SFI'd and frame transactions is CFI. But yeah, I mean the 2 EIPs depend on frame transactions also being SFI'd. Yeah, another thing I need to mention here, just because it runs through the sort of like rest of the presentation, is the relationship between Fossil and VOPS. VOPS is validity only partial statelessness. And so we are preparing for a world where all nodes no longer to keep the full state, need to keep the full state, just like parts of it, I guess, which is like the partial, what partial stands for. But like the thing is, like Fossil includers, to do their duties, they still have to check that the transaction is valid before they can put it on inclusion lists. So they need at least some partial state to do that. And VOPS is exactly that part of the state that's relevant for censorship resistance. It's like the bounded state that a node is guaranteed and will be guaranteed to keep in the future, so they can validate transactions in the public mempool and build inclusion lists. And yeah, it's pretty important for the 2 EIPs because it gives us like a very neat constraints that we'll use to present both EIPs, because anything needed to validate a private application transaction or private protocol transaction, like its nonce or its Merkle root, has to live in VOPS. Otherwise, it can't benefit from sort of like Fossil inclusion guarantees. And so we'll see that both 8250 and 8272 are really about moving one more piece of validation state into VOPs. I'm also preparing like sort of like an informational draft EIP that will explain this in more detail. But yeah, so I thought the best way to introduce these EAPs was to give a super brief overview of the problems privacy protocols have today, and then explain sort of like why the EAPs actually solve them. And so, you know, if we take an example like Tornado Cache or Railgun or privacy pools, like they differ a bit, but the concept is relatively similar. So let's say Alice wants to swap or transfer privately on Ethereum today using a privacy protocol. Typically, her balance is hidden inside a node in a Merkle tree. And when she wants to swap, her wallet builds a transaction payload with like input nodes that are being spent. Like sometimes a fresh output commitment. Very importantly, a ZK proof of ownership and balance. And then it also generates nullifiers for the spent nodes to avoid double spend. And yeah, a recent Merkle root that we'll also explain a bit more later. And then the contract call to the sort of like actual privacy protocol. So whether it's like Railgun, Tornado Cache, or privacy pools, it's the same thing. But the big problem is she can't send it by herself today while staying private. Basically, if she uses her own wallet to fund the address and pays for the gas, it links her wallet, which like defeats the purpose of privacy. And if she doesn't want to do that, well, she can't, like she has no gas to sort of like pay for the transactions she wants to submit. So it doesn't work either. So today, what she does instead is like she uses trusted third parties. And so her transaction payload is sent to that third party, whether it's, we call it a relayer or a broadcaster, it's same sort of like high level idea. And it can be via, P2P encrypted networks like Waku for Railgun. It can be also just like directly or using Tor or Mixnet to try to hide her IP. But the thing is like, yeah, the broadcaster or relay is supposed to sort of like decrypt the payload, build an Ethereum transaction, sign it, and pay gas. And pays the gas. So like basically on chain, the transaction comes from the broadcaster and not from Alice. The problem with that is that using a third party is obviously a very obvious censorship vector. So if the broadcaster goes offline or doesn't like Alice, then she can't transact at all. And so the first thing that solves this is 8141. And I'm obviously not going to get into it too much because most people know it, but it really does allow to split validation, gas payments, and execution in two different frames. And it's very, very important for privacy dApp transactions specifically, because it means users can now submit native transactions in the sort of like public mempool that use trustless paymasters instead of like using these trusted third parties. But the thing is, like if you do that, there's still a problem. And that problem is very specific to privacy, but basically we want the visible transaction sender to be the same for everyone. And so we expect all users to send their transactions to the same sort of like privacy dApp contract. So in that case, Alice would like stay hidden inside the ZK proof and not visible as like the actual transaction sender. And so that's nice, it works, like it gives us like a common public envelope and it's really good for the anonymity set, but it also creates a weird sort of like sender nonce bottleneck with the current way we are doing nonce. So it's very simple, but like, imagine Alice and Bob are both constructing friend transactions with like the same transaction sender, that is the privacy dApp contract. Under the normal sort of like legacy nonce model, they both read the same sender nonce, so let's say 42, and we can't really expect them to coordinate. So yeah, one user's inclusion will invalidate the other pending transactions from that same sender nonce. So I think the right mental model is like a nonce race. And this is where 8250 is useful. because it lets many transactions use the same sender while living in different nonce lanes. So instead of like one account nonce, the replay domain now becomes a pair with nonce keys and nonce sequence. And so if the nonce keys are set to 0, then it reverts to like the normal legacy account behavior. But for privacy dApps, the natural thing for them to do is to use nullifiers for nonce keys. And so how it works is like you use nullifiers for nonce keys, you can submit many transactions, it won't conflict like with the transactions of others. And the first use has the nonce sequence set to 0, and the keys are consumed when like the payment for the transaction is approved. And very importantly, we will store the keyed nonces in a system contract that will be part of VOPs. So again, it's part of state that can benefit from Fossil inclusion guarantees. And that leads us to 8072, which is recent roots. And I mentioned that a private transaction proves ownership and balance, but ownership against a recent Merkle root. But basically today, the way it's done, it's like each privacy protocol keeps that root in its own contract storage. So Merkle roots are like scattered all over the state and not standardized, which means like if you have like a partially stateless includer, we have no guarantees that they will be holding the root of a given ZK proof that is submitted in a transaction, and that it depends on. So 8272 is all about fixing that. Basically, it's another system contract, and each privacy dApp writes one new root per block into like a standardized recent root buffer. And that system contract is part of VOPs. So again, like you have the roots and the keyed nonces, meaning the nullifiers that are like both in system contracts and they are both part of VOPs, so they can benefit from Fossil. I guess two small design points is that we keep a window of recent roots, not just the latest, because the tree can change between whenever sort of like Alice built her ZK proof and when it's actually is included. So the window keeps her proof valid and buys time for inclusion. Another design point is that roots are written once per block, not per transaction. Otherwise, you could have like an attacker that could cycle through the whole window in a single block and invalidate every ZK proof that are not yet included. And so if we zoom out a tiny bit, it's basically structurally a very similar object to keyed nonces, and the transaction will declare upfront exactly which states it depends on and that state will be used only for validity, and it's also bounded in size. And yeah, so that's what lets basically those two. We've seen that it gives both the trustless sort of like property and the censorship resistance property we want from Fossil. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks. I do want to say I really hope we can ship these two additional sort of like EIPs in Hegota. I feel like they are quite minimal in terms of actual complexity, and they do sit on like two larger EIPs that are like Fossil and from transactions, but they would allow like a pretty drastic improvement for privacy on Ethereum L1. Also, it allows us not to be too opinionated about enshrining one particular design, which I like, and it's also quite aligned with Ethereum philosophy, I think. Like letting app developers sort of like innovate and come up with privacy apps that can be only built on Ethereum and are maybe not just about transfers is also quite exciting, because it doesn't really exist anywhere else, like private DeFi and things like this. And yeah, on the research side, we have a pretty good idea of what will be needed to make private transactions PQ secure in follow-up forks. So we are working on this, but like it will only be possible if we ship the sort of like core primitives first. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is like Ethrex is already working on a DevNet, trying to integrate 8141, 8250, and 8272. And so there is a bit of work started there. It's early, but please reach out if you're interested in working on this as well. I think there is a lot to do, and we would love some help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Any questions for now? I think I would keep it brief here, so maybe only if it's like structural questions. Guillaume? Guillaume, you are muted.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, quick question about 8272. What makes it necessary when you already have 2935, which gives you the root of the block, and that you could use since you're using ZK proof, you could pass the proofs from the block root all the way to the format you're to the state root that you're targeting. And this has the advantage that if you ever change the tree format, you don't have to worry about each individual account having a state root. Whereas with this EIP 8272, you would be enforcing forever the what's that called, each account having their own state root. So yeah, I'm just curious, why not go for 2935?
Yeah, it's not for the block root. It's for the Merkle root from privacy protocols. So it's quite different. It's the literal, like, privacy protocols do maintain their own Merkle trees with their own Merkle root that proofs have to prove, like ZK proofs have to prove against. And so that's for this. It's not for the block root.
But those roots are somehow embedded somewhere in the state, right? Otherwise, no one commits to them, and you don't have any security there.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the reason was that you cannot access the 2935 roots in the verify frame. Was that the problem? I don't remember it exactly, because what Guillaume says makes sense in general. That you could just prove it against the state, you have the state root. Of course, this would mean more call data. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, then maybe we can take this question offline though. No, I don't want to cut it too short here, but like it feels like, I mean, it seems like a reasonable question to dive in more, but probably not right now. Okay. Any other comments on the specific on the presentation? Otherwise, then I would move on. Tony, you also had two EIPs you wanted to propose, 7862 and 8146. Do you want to briefly talk about those?
Yes, this will be very quick. 1 second, I will quickly share my screen. I also posted the presentation to the chat. I hope you can see it right now.
We can see your screen.
Perfect. Yeah, those two EIPs are delayed state root and block level access list sidecars. So let's start with the delayed state root. It's an EIP by Charlie, Dan, Justin, and me, proposed 2 years ago, round about that. And the original idea is to do the same that we are now doing on the CL, essentially delaying the state root on the EL, which means we don't include the post state root into the header, but we include the pre-state root. So everything is delayed by one block. And the problem we are trying to solve with that is that today builders, they construct like a few thousand blocks per slot because they have a lot of different candidate blocks that are all submitted to relays. And for each of those blocks, builders have to compute the post state root. And this is a lot of work. And the same work will in the future also face provers. So CKVM provers will, if they are the same entities as the builders, they will face the same problem that for every block that is built, you need to compute a different post state root. And this is prevented by just making sure that each block validates the post state of the previous block. And this is essentially everything. The cost is that for light clients, for example, proofs will be delayed by yet another slot. I think they're already delayed because of the sync committee. And this will just add one slot of delay in addition. And one nice side effect for builders is that builders can also build optimistically by just using the block level access list of the previous slot, apply it to the state, and then start building on top of the correct post state while still validating the previous block. So this is mainly an EAP that helps local builders, professional builders, and potentially in the future provers. But this is still to be figured out what the exact impact on CKVMs is. The specs are super simple. So what we would do is we would just instead of validating the post state root after execution, we would validate the pre-state root before execution. And the final change would basically be replacing the post state root field in the header with a pre-state root field. And then the second EAP is by Raul and me, which is block access list sidecars. And the idea there is that today we put the block level access list in the execution payload envelope. And the idea is to take it out and have it being a separate object that is gossiped over a separate gossip channel and like a separate gossip topic. And the commitment from that separate object would be the same as the execution payload envelope. So we would have a commitment to this to the root of this BAL object in the bit. And the PTC would then also enforce the availability of this new object. And the cool thing here is that we could make sure that the BAL is received earlier than the payload. So CLs would receive the block level access list. They can directly forward it over the engine API to the EL, and the EL, without having the transactions yet, could already use the BAL for prefetching state and also calculating the post state root. So this is quite nice for streamlining. And the thing why this works is because with ePBS, builders cannot publish the payload at the time when they see the commitment to their payload. So at the time when they see the bit being included in the block, they cannot yet release the payload for security reasons. So they might wait until the end, until the attestation deadline, because there is signed data in the payload. So for example, builders put their own transactions in the payload, those transactions are signed, and to prevent builders from being unbundled, they might wait for 1 or 2 seconds at max until they release the payload. For the BAL, this doesn't apply. So the BAL contains nothing that is signed and nothing that can be unbundled. So builders have more security in releasing it early. And this would, in the end, like downstream help ELs execute the block faster. And what we could do is, for example, have a BAL deadline for the PTC at second 5, for example, or second 4, a few seconds earlier than the payload deadline. And from a specs change perspective, it's very minimal. You would add the block access list root into the bit and new gossip topics and new engine API topics. For the EL, one thing that would change is that the EL would now receive 2 messages. So there is the payload and then there is the BAL, and usually the BAL would be passed to the EL before the payload. But of course, this must be handled flexibly because we cannot guarantee that. Right. And that's basically all the changes this EAP would come with. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Are there any comments or questions for this presentation? Justin?
Thank you, Tony. This is awesome. I can clearly see how there's a ton less hashing going on here. Who do you think benefits from this in the protocol? Like which different actors in the protocol are going to actually yield the benefits from reducing all of this work that needs to be done to recalculate state roots now that the BAL is really our representation of where the state is at?
So for the first EIP, for the delayed state route, I think the main people profiting are builders and potentially provers. For provers, we still have to look into this a bit. I'm currently in discussions with the CKVM team, and as far as Ignacio and me were discussing, it looks like provers will just benefit just like builders benefit. So they will have like 1 or 2 additional seconds that they can use otherwise, because they don't have to calculate thousands of post-state routes, but only 1. And for the second EIP, I would say the users are the main entities benefiting, because this would essentially allow us to scale even further. So we would make sure that ELs can use the time they have even more efficiently. Start with the prefetching of the state, which is among the most expensive operations. Start with that very early, and when the transactions arrive, EL clients potentially have all the state fetched already, plus potentially have already calculated the post-state route. So I would say the second EIP, the BAL separation from the execution payload envelope, is mainly a scaling feature.
Thanks, Tony.
Any other questions? Awesome. Well, thank you, Tony. And we have one more EIP. I think it was by Ben, the EIP 8298. Ben, are you on the call?
Yep. So this is a set code from operation, opcode. And the idea is merging EIP 7851 that was presented last ACD, or the one before, and AP 58. So you provide an address to the opcode, and let me put this in chat. And it copies the code hash from that to the current address. And the idea behind that, why you don't give a code hash, is you need to ensure that the code is on chain and that it's not pointing somewhere random. And also there's no consensus on what's not there. So I think if you do a full sync, you'll end up with less, snap sync, you'll end up with less contracts because some aren't attached. And the idea is in the 7851, which was the upgrade for 7702, there were some additional complex rules to prevent signing and so forth. But the set code from turns the contract turns the address, if it was an EOA using 7702, into a proper smart contract. So naturally, with the current rules, the transaction pool blocks transactions being signed from that address. So you get that for free. And then there's the other EIP that it would sort of cover is the idea that I think 90% of contracts on Ethereum are duplicates. But when they're deployed, you have to put all the code in the transaction, even if you're doing it. The alternative is creating a proxy, but most users are trained not to trust proxy contracts, and it has additional overhead. So you either pay a lot of gas to essentially just copy a contract, or you pay additional gas per transaction to do a delegate call. And then this would have, so you could have like a Uniswap V2 pool, which essentially is always copying the same contract but paying the full gas for create two. It would just be setting the code hash in the contract, which is very light in comparison of trying to deploy all the code. And then from there, you could see emergent behavior of libraries on chain and things like that, where people deploy contracts with addresses that, like a common token contract. And then people would say, okay, copy the common contract for this token to my new deployment. There we go. Any comments?
Okay, sounds like no immediate comments. Thank you, Ben. And with that would be all the EIPs proposed today to be presented for Higota. Again, reminder, everyone, we have 2 more Algodas calls, ACDE calls, the one in 2 weeks and the one in 4 weeks, for further proposals, and then we will have the deadline for Higota on August 6th. Last up on the agenda, we had in the miscellaneous section, Pooja had a few housekeeping items. Pooja, I think it's probably doesn't make sense to go into the specifics on the call, but could you maybe give a quick rundown of what's in there so people know to look into it?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ansgar. So I was looking into the meta EAP of Amsterdam as well as the forecast and trying to make sure that we have all EIPs and we do have a single source of truth, that is meta EAP. I found meta EAP was 7773 out of sync, so made a PR where we are trying to fix put all the statuses and stages in place. I have one question for the group is about EIP 7610. I understand it has been deferred from DevNet 6, but I could not find it in DevNet 7. However, I see that in Meta EAP. So just curious, is it still the part of Amsterdam upgrade or not?
Sorry, what was the number?
7610. The EIP is revert creation in case of non-empty storage.
Sorry, what's the question?
The question is if it is still part of Amsterdam or not.
I think it in theory doesn't need any actual change. It's a clarification of the protocol, but I could be wrong. So yes, it would be in Amsterdam.
Perfect.
But
So that should be part of Meta EAP, right?
yes, and it's in effect deployed already.
Very well. I asked this question because I could not find this EIP in either DevNet 6 or DevNet 7, the list that is available on forecast. Well, that's fine. And I understand this proposal is in CFI, so that should be there. Another quick request for the author of EIP 8282. It seems like the EIP has been approved, but it is not being merged because of some fix that is required on HTML side. So please make sure that you make those changes so the PR is merged. Once that PR is merged, the PR for updating Meta EAP can be merged. And one final request to all the EIP authors whose EIP is in the Amsterdam upgrade. Now that we are towards the end of DevNet, that means we'll be soon moving it to public testnet. We should have all the proposal in review status. Most of them seems to be in draft status now. So kindly take some time out and update them to move it to review status. So when we are in public testnet, we can move it to the last call. That's all from my end. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pooja. Yeah, and I think this is all, at least everything we had on the agenda. Is there anything else, anything anyone would want to bring up today? Okay, nice. Then we can give you 15 minutes back. That's the end of the call then. Thank you everyone for attending, and I'll see you again in 2 weeks or next week on ACDC. Bye everyone.